Hey, thanks for clicking. This is Buddy Chronicle. So, a retired man trusts the wrong woman with his golden years, but someone in his family refuses to let him go down without a fight. Stay to the end and let's get into it. Your Honor, I'd like to address the court before any ruling is made. My granddaughter Ellie stood up from the third row. 20 years old, barely 5'4", wearing a blazer she'd borrowed from her college roommate because she wanted to look professional. Her voice didn't waver. Not even a little. Judge Raymond Caldwell looked over his glasses. This was supposed to be a straightforward guardianship hearing. My wife Patricia had petitioned the court to be appointed my legal guardian, claiming I was suffering from cognitive decline and could no longer manage my own affairs. Simple paperwork. Sign it, stamp it, hand over control of a 3-year-old man's entire life to the woman sharing his bed. Young lady, this is a closed proceeding. May I ask your relation to the parties? My name is Eleanor Brennan Holt. The respondent is my grandfather. And the petitioner, she looked directly at Patricia, is a liar, a thief, and a fraud. I have 4 years of recordings to prove it. Patricia's face drained of color so fast I thought she might faint right there at the petitioner's table. Her attorney, a sharp-dressed man named Victor Langston who specialized in elder law and charged accordingly, put his hand on her arm. But Patricia pulled away. Ellie, sweetheart, what are you doing? You don't understand what's happening here. I understand perfectly, Patricia. That's the problem. Ellie walked forward, holding a laptop and a manila folder thick enough to stop a door. She set both on the edge of the witness stand and turned to the judge. Your Honor, for the past 4 years I have been recording conversations in my grandfather's home. Conversations that prove Patricia Holt has been systematically stealing his money, manipulating his medication, isolating him from his family, and fabricating evidence of mental decline to seize control of his estate. Everything is documented. Dates, amounts, names, co-conspirators. The courtroom went dead quiet. Judge Caldwell removed his glasses. Young lady, those are extraordinarily serious allegations. Yes, sir. I've had 4 years to make sure of them. Patricia stood up. She's a disturbed girl. She's always been jealous of my relationship with her grandfather. Whatever she recorded is taken out of context. Then you won't mind if the court hears it, Ellie said. She opened the laptop and pressed play. And my entire world shattered and rebuilt itself in the span of 40 minutes. Let me take you back. My name is Walter Holt. I'm 63 years old. I spent 34 years teaching high school history in Louisville, Kentucky. Not the kind of career that makes you rich, but it gave me summers off, a decent pension, and the satisfaction of knowing I'd helped a few thousand kids learn something about the world. I retired in 2019 with a paid-off house, a healthy 401k, and what I thought was a good life ahead of me. My first wife, Connie, passed in 2013. Breast cancer. We had 28 years together, one son named David. Connie was the kind of woman who made everything better just by being in the room. Losing her nearly broke me. For 2 years after she died, I barely functioned. Went through the motions, taught my classes, came home to an empty house, ate dinner alone. Repeated. David worried about me. He lived in Nashville with his wife Karen and their daughter Ellie, about 3 hours south. He called every week, drove up once a month. Kept telling me I needed to get out more, meet people, live again. So, in 2016, I joined a hiking group at the community center. That's where I met Patricia Simmons. She was 51, divorced, worked as a dental office manager. Attractive, energetic, full of life in a way I hadn't felt in years. She laughed at my jokes. She asked about my day. She made me feel like I wasn't just running out the clock. We dated for 8 months and got married in the spring of 2017. David was cautious but supportive. If she makes you happy, Dad, that's what matters. Ellie, who was 14 at the time, hugged me at the wedding and said, "Grandpa, I'm glad you're smiling again." For the first couple years, Patricia was everything I'd hoped for. She redecorated the house, planned trips, dragged me to restaurants and concerts I never would have tried on my own. She brought color back into a life that had gone gray. But looking back now, I can see the shift. It started small. Patricia suggested she handle the household finances since I was still working and she was better with numbers. Made sense at the time. She set up online banking, moved accounts around for better interest rates, she said, and took over paying the bills. I let her. Connie had always managed our money too. It felt natural to let someone else take the wheel. Then came the isolation. Patricia didn't like David's wife, Karen, called her nosy and controlling. Started picking fights before family visits, until it became easier to just see David alone. Then she had problems with David, too. He asks too many personal questions. He treats me like an outsider. Why does he need to come up every month? Can't he just call? Gradually, my son's visits went from monthly to quarterly to barely at all. Patricia would answer my phone when David called and tell him I was napping or out for a walk. She filtered my mail, my messages, my contact with the outside world, and I didn't see it because I didn't want to see it. I was lonely, I was grateful, and I was a fool. The first time something felt truly wrong was late 2020. I'd been retired for a year. Patricia had convinced me to add her name to my bank accounts, my investment portfolio, even the deed to the house. For protection, she said. In case something happens to you, I don't want to be left with nothing like I was after my first divorce. It made sense. She was my wife. Of course, she should be protected. Then I tried to withdraw money for a new water heater and discovered our savings account was $40,000 lighter than it should have been. I asked Patricia about it. She didn't miss a beat. We talked about this, Walter. The kitchen renovation, the trip to Savannah, the new roof last year. Don't you remember? I remembered the kitchen renovation. I remembered Savannah. But the numbers still didn't add up. And something about the way she said, "Don't you remember," made my stomach turn. Like she was testing me, planting a seed. I let it go. Told myself I was being paranoid. Told myself that a 1-year-old man forgetting a few expenses was normal, not evidence of anything sinister. I didn't know that my granddaughter had already been watching. Ellie told me everything that night after the hearing. How it started, why she did it, what she found. She was 16 when she first suspected Patricia. It was Thanksgiving 2021. Ellie had come up from Nashville with David and Karen for the holiday. Patricia was her usual charming self at dinner, but Ellie noticed things. The way Patricia controlled the conversation, steering it away from anything financial. The way she hovered when I talked to David, like a guard monitoring a prisoner's visitor. The way she casually mentioned that Grandpa's memory isn't what it used to be, and I need to look into some options for him. Something about it felt rehearsed, Ellie told me later, like she was laying groundwork. After dinner, Ellie went upstairs to use the bathroom and past the home office. The door was cracked. She glanced inside and saw Patricia's laptop open on the desk, a spreadsheet visible on the screen. Columns of numbers, account names she recognized as mine, transfer amounts, dates. She didn't say anything, didn't tell her parents. Instead, she started paying attention. Over the next few months, during every visit, Ellie watched. She noticed Patricia's phone calls that always happened in the other room. She noticed the stack of mail Patricia kept in a locked drawer. She noticed the new prescriptions on my nightstand. Medications I didn't remember my doctor prescribing. By the summer of 2022, Ellie had started recording. She used her phone first, leaving it on the kitchen counter with the voice memo running when Patricia thought she was out in the garden. Then she bought a small digital recorder online, the kind that looks like a USB drive, and hid it in the living room bookshelf during her visits. She was 17 years old, building a case against her step-grandmother, alone. I didn't tell Mom and Dad because they would have confronted Patricia directly, Ellie explained. And Patricia would have denied everything, called me a troubled teenager, and doubled down on isolating you. I needed proof. Not suspicions, not feelings, proof. 4 years of recordings. Hundreds of files. What they revealed made me physically sick. The financial theft was staggering. Patricia had been siphoning money from every account she could access. My pension deposits were being partially rerouted to an account in her name only. My investment portfolio had been liquidated in chunks, moved through 3 intermediary accounts, and deposited into a trust she had set up with her sister Beverly in Houston. She had taken out a home equity line of credit against my house for $120,000, forging my signature. She had opened 4 credit cards in my name and maxed every single one. The total, when Ellie and the forensic accountant she eventually hired with her own summer job savings finally tallied it up, was $587,000, over $500,000 stolen from a retired school teacher's life savings. But the money was only part of it. The medication manipulation was what kept me awake at night after I learned about it. Ellie had recorded Patricia on the phone with her sister Beverly, discussing my prescriptions. Patricia's voice, casual and cold. The doctor prescribed him a low dose for his blood pressure, but I've been giving him double. It makes him foggy, confused. Last week he couldn't remember what day it was, Beverly laughing. Is that safe? Patricia again, safe enough. I'm not trying to kill him. I just need him confused enough that when I file the guardianship petition, the doctor will confirm cognitive decline. A few more months of this and no judge in the world will say he's competent. She was drugging me. Not with poison, not with anything dramatic, but by deliberately over-medicating me so I would appear mentally diminished. Every time I lost my train of thought, every time I couldn't find my keys, every time I felt foggy and disoriented, it wasn't aging, it wasn't early dementia. It was my wife methodically destroying my mental clarity to build a case for taking control of my life. There were more recordings. Patricia and a man named Ross Underhill, a financial advisor who was helping her hide the stolen assets in exchange for a cut. Patricia and her sister Beverly, planning which assisted living facility they'd put me in once the guardianship was granted so they could sell the house. Patricia and Victor Langston, her attorney, rehearsing the testimony she'd give about my confusion, my forgetfulness, my inability to manage daily tasks. And there was one more thing, the affair. Ross Underhill wasn't just her financial co-conspirator. Ellie had recordings from early 2024 that made the nature of their relationship unmistakable. Patricia talking to Beverly on the phone after what was clearly an evening with Ross. He wants me to leave Walter now, but I told him we have to wait until the guardianship goes through. Once I control everything, we sell the house, liquidate the retirement accounts, and disappear. Ross has a place in Costa Rica. No extradition for civil matters. Beverly. And Walter just sits there with no clue. Patricia laughing. The man can barely remember what he had for breakfast. That's the beauty of it. By the time anyone figures out what happened, Ross and I will be on a beach, and Walter will be drooling in some state-funded nursing home, wondering why his family never visits. My wife was planning to drug me into incompetence, steal everything I'd spent 34 years earning, dump me in a facility, and flee the country with her lover. And she had been smiling at me across the breakfast table every single morning while she did it. Ellie played 7 recordings in that courtroom, each one worse than the last. After the 3rd recording, where Patricia discussed the medication manipulation, Judge Caldwell stopped the proceedings and called for a deputy. After the 5th, where Patricia and Ross discussed the Costa Rica plan, he instructed security to prevent anyone from leaving. After the 7th, where Patricia coached Beverly on what to say if questioned about the trust fund, the judge sat back in his chair and stared at my wife with an expression I can only describe as controlled fury. Mrs. Holt, do you have anything to say? Patricia was crying. The hysterical kind. Mascara running, hands shaking. This is all fabricated. My granddaughter-in-law has always resented me. She manipulated these recordings. These are your words, Mrs. Holt. Your voice. Your plans. Judge Caldwell's voice was ice. You conspired to drug your husband, steal his assets, and have him declared incompetent based on a condition you deliberately created. In over 30 years on the bench, I have rarely seen anything this calculated. She looked at Victor Langston. Her attorney was already packing his briefcase. Your Honor, I had no knowledge of any criminal activity my client may have engaged in. I was retained solely for the guardianship petition based on information she provided. We'll be discussing the information she provided, Counselor, at length. Judge Caldwell turned to the deputy. I'm suspending this hearing and referring the matter to the district attorney's office immediately. The evidence presented today suggests multiple felonies, including elder abuse, financial exploitation, fraud, forgery, identity theft, and conspiracy. Mrs. Holt is to remain in custody until law enforcement arrives. That's when Patricia ran. She knocked her chair backward, shoved past Victor Langston, and sprinted for the door in her heels. She made it about 8 feet before the deputy caught her arm. She twisted, clawed at him, screaming. This isn't fair. He was going to die eventually anyway. That money was going to be mine. It should be mine. I earned it. I spent 7 years in that boring house with that boring old man. I earned every penny. The deputy and a court officer wrestled her into a chair. She was still screaming when they put the handcuffs on. I sat there watching the woman I had shared my bed with for 7 years reveal who she truly was. Boring old man. Going to die eventually. Earned every penny. That's what I was to her. A paycheck with an expiration date. The aftermath took almost a year to sort out. The district attorney charged Patricia with 23 counts. Elder abuse. Financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Fraud. Forgery. Identity theft. Assault by medication tampering. Conspiracy. The medication tampering charge alone carried up to 10 years in Tennessee. Ross Underhill was arrested at his office 2 days after the hearing. He'd been trying to wire money out of the hidden accounts when the FBI froze everything. He was charged as a co-conspirator on the financial crimes and faced his own set of fraud charges for his role as a licensed financial advisor who had knowingly participated in elder exploitation. Beverly was arrested in Houston. She tried to claim she didn't know the money was stolen, but Ellie had recordings of her discussing the theft in detail, laughing about it, planning how to spend it. She was extradited to Kentucky and charged with conspiracy and money laundering. Victor Langston wasn't charged, but the state bar opened an investigation into whether he had been willfully blind to his client's fraud. Last I heard, he quietly retired rather than face a disciplinary hearing. Patricia's trial was in the spring of 2026. 3 weeks of testimony. Ellie was on the stand for a day and a half. Calm, precise, devastating. She played recording after recording, explained her methodology, described what it was like to watch her grandfather being slowly poisoned and robbed by someone who kissed him goodnight every evening. The prosecutor asked her why she didn't go to the police sooner. Because I needed the full picture, Ellie said. If I had reported the financial theft early on, Patricia would have blamed my grandfather's confusion, the same confusion she was deliberately causing. She would have claimed he authorized the transfers and forgot. Her whole scheme depended on him looking incompetent. I had to document the medication, tampering, the affair, the escape plan, everything, so there was no room for her to spin a story. I needed the web to be complete before I pulled the thread. She was 20 years old. She sounded like a prosecutor herself. Patricia was convicted on 19 of 23 counts. The judge sentenced her to 12 years. No possibility of parole for 6. Ross Underhill got 8 years and lost his financial licenses permanently. His wife left him. His clients sued him. The last I heard, he owed more in restitution and civil judgments than he'd ever be able to pay. Beverly got 4 years for conspiracy and money laundering. She tried to cut a deal by testifying against her own sister, but the prosecution didn't need her. They had Ellie's recordings. The forged documents were traced back to a notary who Patricia had paid to falsify my signatures. He lost his commission and was charged with fraud. The doctor who Patricia had been working with to overprescribe my medication, a general practitioner who had been receiving cash payments to write prescriptions without proper evaluation, was reported to the medical board. He surrendered his license before the hearing. Everyone who helped Patricia try to destroy me faced consequences. Every single one. And it all happened because a 16-year-old girl saw something wrong at Thanksgiving dinner and refused to look away. The first thing I did after the guardianship petition was dismissed was call my son David. I hadn't spoken to him in almost 5 months. Patricia had convinced me he was too busy, that he didn't want to be bothered, that calling him would just be a burden. I believed her because the medication made everything fuzzy, and her voice was the clearest thing in my world. "Dad?" David answered on the second ring. "Dad? Is that you? Are you okay? Ellie told us everything. We've been trying to reach you for weeks." "I'm okay, David. I'm so sorry." He drove up from Nashville that night, walked through my front door at 11 p.m., and hugged me for a long time. Karen was with him. She was crying. Ellie was in the back seat, already asleep. We sat at the kitchen table until 2 in the morning. David told me how Patricia had been intercepting his calls for over a year, how she'd told him I didn't want visitors, how she'd gradually built a wall between us so thick that even his texts weren't getting through. "I should have pushed harder," David said. "I should have driven up and knocked on the door. You couldn't have known." Ellie knew. "Yeah." I looked at my granddaughter, curled up on the living room couch with a blanket David had draped over her. She knew. The medication issue was resolved quickly once I had a proper doctor reviewing my prescriptions. Within 6 weeks of being on the correct dosages, the fog lifted. I could think clearly again, could remember things, could hold a conversation without losing my train of thought. The confusion Patricia had used as evidence of my declining mind disappeared because it had never been real. She had manufactured it, pill by pill, month by month. My real doctor was furious. He told me that what Patricia had done was tantamount to slow poisoning, and that if she'd continued much longer, the cumulative effect on my organs could have caused serious permanent damage. I came that close to losing not just my money and my freedom, but my health. My life. That was 2 years ago. I'm 63 now, fully recovered, mentally sharp, physically active. I walk 3 miles every morning along the river. I volunteer at the local library twice a week, helping adults with reading skills. I rejoined the hiking group where I met Patricia, which felt strange at first, but the people there are good people, and I refuse to let her take that away from me too. The financial recovery is slower. We got about $340,000 back through restitution orders and the frozen accounts, but the rest is gone, spent by Patricia and Ross on things I'll never see. The house is still mine, clear of the fraudulent equity line now, and my pension is secure. I won't be vacationing in Europe anytime soon, but I have enough. More than enough for a retired history teacher who's learned that the most valuable things in life don't show up on a bank statement. David and Karen come up from Nashville every other weekend now. We make up for lost time. I go to their place for holidays. We cook together, watch football, argue about politics the way families are supposed to. And Ellie. My Ellie. She's a junior at the University of Kentucky now, pre-law. Shocked no one. She wants to be a prosecutor specializing in elder abuse cases. Says what happened to me showed her how easily vulnerable people can be exploited when no one's paying attention, and she wants to be the person who pays attention professionally. She's going to be extraordinary. She already is. We have dinner every Wednesday. She drives over from campus, and I make spaghetti because it's the one dish Connie taught me that I never messed up. We eat and talk about her classes, her friends, the internship she's applying for at the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. Normal grandfather-granddaughter stuff, the kind of conversations that Patricia tried to make sure we'd never have again. Sometimes we talk about what happened. Do you regret it? I asked her last month over spaghetti. The recording, the secrecy, all of it. 4 years is a long time to carry something like that alone. She twirled her fork and thought about it. I regret that it was necessary. I wish I'd had a step-grandmother who actually cared about you instead of your bank account. But the recordings themselves? No. I'd do it again. Why? Because you're my grandpa. She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world. You taught me to ride a bike. You came to every school play. You drove 3 hours to Nashville and back every time I had a soccer game. You read me history books when other grandpas were reading fairy tales, and I loved every minute of it. She put down her fork. When I saw what Patricia was doing to you, stealing from you, drugging you, cutting you off from Dad and me, I couldn't just watch. You spent your whole life showing up for the people you love. The least I could do was show up for you. I didn't know what to say, so I just told her I loved her and that her grandmother, Connie, would have been so proud of her. She smiled. That was more than enough. 3 months ago, I got a letter from Patricia. The prison allows correspondence, and apparently she'd decided to write after 2 years of silence. I almost threw it away, but curiosity has always been my weakness, and I opened it. Most of it was what you'd expect. Justifications, rationalizations, a long paragraph about how her first husband's betrayal had damaged her ability to trust and love honestly. Explanations that weren't really explanations. But near the end, one section gave me pause. I told myself you were just a means to an end. That you wouldn't even notice the money. That you'd end up in a home anyway, so what difference did it make? But the truth is, I did notice you, Walter. I noticed how kind you were. How you left coffee out for me every morning even though you didn't drink it. How you asked about my day and actually listened. And I did it anyway. That's the part I can't make peace with. Not that I failed. That I chose to keep going even when some part of me knew you didn't deserve it. I read it twice. Then I tore the letter up and put it in the recycling bin. Understanding doesn't fix anything. Clarity in a prison cell doesn't undo 7 years of deception. Words on a page don't give me back the time she stole, the trust she destroyed, or the years of fog she inflicted on my mind. But there was something in knowing she couldn't pretend anymore. Couldn't spin the story. Couldn't tell herself she was the victim. She had to sit with the truth every single day, and that truth would follow her long after the cell door opened. That's its own kind of justice. Last week, Ellie called me with news. Her voice had that particular brightness that means something good has happened. Grandpa, I got accepted to the summer program at the DA's office. I'm going to be working on actual elder abuse cases, real ones. I'm so proud of you, Ellie. There's something else. She paused. I've been seeing someone. His name is Marcus. He's in the engineering program. He's really kind. I want you to meet him. I'd love that. Bring him to Wednesday spaghetti. Is that okay? It won't be weird? Why would it be weird? I don't know. After everything with Patricia, after how that started, you meeting someone, and how it turned out. I just worry sometimes that you'll never trust anyone again. That what she did ruined that for you. I thought about that for a long moment. Ellie, what Patricia did was about Patricia. About who she was. About the choices she made. It doesn't say anything about people in general. Your grandmother Connie loved me for 28 years, honestly and completely. Your father is one of the best men I know, and you spent 4 years protecting me when I couldn't protect myself. The world is full of good people. Patricia just wasn't one of them. Don't let one bad person convince you that trust is a mistake. She was quiet for a second. Grandpa, when did you get so wise? I've been wise my whole life. Nobody listened because I was a history teacher. She laughed. A real laugh. Warm and bright and full of life. I'll bring Marcus on Wednesday. I'll make extra spaghetti. We said goodbye and I sat in my kitchen. The same kitchen where Patricia used to sort through my mail, removing anything she didn't want me to see. The same kitchen where she double-dosed my medication every morning with a smile on her face. The same kitchen where she made phone calls to her lover, planning their escape to Costa Rica while I sat in the next room, grading papers, trusting her completely. It's a different kitchen now. Not because I renovated it, but because the lies are gone. The secrets are gone. The fog is gone. For the first time in years, I can think clearly, see clearly, live clearly, and it all happened because a 16-year-old girl with her grandmother's stubbornness and her grandfather's love of truth decided that justice was worth 4 years of patience. If you're watching this and you have a loved one who seems to be slipping away, who seems confused or isolated or not themselves, pay attention. Don't assume it's just aging. Don't assume the people closest to them have their best interests at heart. Ask questions, show up unannounced, look at the details. Because sometimes the people who are supposed to protect us are the ones we need protection from. And if you're someone like Ellie, someone who sees something wrong and feels too small or too young to do anything about it, listen to me. You're not too small. you're not too young. The truth is the most powerful thing in the world, and you don't need a badge or a law degree to use it. You just need the courage to pay attention and the patience to wait for the right moment. Ellie had both, and she saved my life. Like this video if you stayed until the end. Share it with someone who needs to hear that it's never too late for the truth to come out. And if you're going through something hard right now, remember, the people who love you are paying more attention than you think. Sometimes the rescue is already on its way, you just can't see it yet.